The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Welcome back to the SPED Collaborative at MTSU, and we are happy to welcome Dr. Allison Gauld from the Tennessee Department of Education. And she's got a great session today on paraeducators, which is such an important person and an important relationship in our schools. So Dr. Gauld, we are happy you're here. So thank you.
I am too. So I'm Dr. Gauld. I am the Senior Manager of Professional Learning and Low Incidence Disabilities at the department. Really, I'm an educator. I came right from the classroom to the department, and I came from a classroom for students with the most complex needs, often referred to as CDC programs here in Tennessee. And so what that meant is that I had paraeducators. I had several. I had ones where it worked great. I had ones where it did not. I had ones I still am waiting to show up. I understand the good, bad, and the ugly, right? And when I say that I'm still waiting, I'm not kidding. I had a paraeducator who missed 85 days in a school year. Yep. Magical flu that settled in every Wednesday night, Thursday, and then magically cured every Monday night. But I say that in that I'm not speaking to you as someone who got it right. I didn't always get it right. There were a lot of times that I could have done some things to make it work better. There were things I learned along the way that did improve some situations. There were some things that were outside my control. So when I share this today, I share this from a place of vulnerability and knowing that this is probably one of the hardest relationships we have in school. They are essential, they are critical for us. As our shortages continue, they become more essential and more critical, and yet it is really hard to manage. And I don't know about you, but when I got my teaching degree, not once in my entire teaching prep program did they have how to manage adults as a class, right? How to manage children, but not how to manage adults. So this is a learn by fire kind of situation, so I'm hoping that this helps. This is also what the department's guidance is moving forward. So if nothing else, this gives you something to point to with this fancy little logo at the bottom that you can say, but the department said, and you will now have that behind you. So let's get into it. I'm sure that my colleague April shared with you that we're not allowed to have generative AI. If you have generative AI, you have to leave, then you come back, and so now I've done my part. So here's the objectives for today. I really and truly want you to understand what their role is and what their role is not. I want to put that in writing, not because you don't have short memories, but because sometimes we need in writing what that is so that we have something to point to and pin. I want you to be able to explain that role to others, especially families and administration, other teachers, and I want to give you some strategies for how to do this a little more successfully if you're not having success, or to how to maintain success should you have that, or how to start if you have your very first paraeducator you're working with. So first and foremost, I think it's important we have some definitions. So a paraprofessional is any person that doesn't have that professional license but supports a professional. Think paramedic, right? They support the medical licensed professionals. Think paralegal. They support a lawyer. So paraprofessional is anyone that supports a professional who doesn't have that professional license themselves, or at least not a professional license in the area they're supporting, right? Sometimes we have people who are in career 2 and they might have a professional license, but not as an educator per se. And so when I talk about paraeducators, I'm talking about those people that support educators but do not have the educator license, or not the appropriate educator license. I have found some situations where we have a paraeducator who's maybe licensed in general ed, but they're supporting a special ed. They don't hold the special ed license, right? And so paraeducators have to work under the direct supervision of someone who has the license. We just define them as not having the license, so they can't be working as though they are licensed. They have to be under direct supervision. Now, direct supervision does not mean that I am like hovering over you, right? It means I'm very aware of what you are doing throughout the day and in your different settings, environments, and with different people. And we're going to break that down a little bit. That might include a variety of things. It could include one-on-one special education services. This is something we often think of when we think of a paraeducator. But it could also include working with small groups of students, even in the special ed setting. They are not a teacher, they are working on behalf of that teacher, being a classroom management assistant. Sometimes that needs to happen, particularly if we have a classroom of students who maybe are all struggling with behavior or emotional supports, such as emotional disturbance. They can be happening with translation and interpreting. We often see this, especially for our students who are deaf. We might see that they need some support, and they can help with instructional support services. But let's really break down what that means under the supervision, because this is what falls to you who are in this room today, is you are in a place where you're going to have to supervise. And yet, real quick, how many of you are special ed directors or in a district office? How many of you are located in a school, single school? How many of you are across schools? Okay, so those of you in a single school, most likely, while I say you're under direct supervision, you actually do not have the authority to be the one who rates them or reviews their performance and then determines their performance level and what that looks like for pay. You're usually working alongside them, and then there's someone else, be it a principal or assistant principal, who's doing that. So when I say under the supervision, I'm talking about what that means legally. I'm not necessarily talking about those structures related to performance review. Okay, so under the supervision is just a short phrase. It's entitled to capture a variety of things, but it is saying that ultimately anything the paraeducator does is a reflection of the teacher, and the teacher is ultimately responsible for that. Right? So your paraeducator makes a very poor choice interacting with the student. The teacher is the one at fault. Yay! Right. Which is why it's important we build relationships, and we're really going to talk about that today. It also means the teacher is the one who's coaching them. So that means we need time to do that, and we're going to talk about that. That also means the person supervising them needs to be an endorsed teacher. They should be an endorsed teacher who's familiar with the students the person's working with. Now I say should because, again, I want to acknowledge that we're fully aware there are staffing shortages. We are not oblivious to that. We know there are situations where you have a single educator who is now overseeing and supervising a lot of paraeducators in order to make those FAPE services happen. And it means you might not have the familiarity with the student you prefer. We need to work through how we get you out of that situation sooner rather than later. And those are things we can support with the district and some systems for that. But I want to acknowledge, I know some of you are in that position, but you really and truly want them to be familiar as much as possible, because that educator who's supervising has to make decisions. It's easier to make decisions if we know what we're making decisions about. But let's break that down, what that really looks like. So the special education teacher is the one who should be collaborating with general ed for any students that are participating in general ed, not the paraeducator. Now that's not to say the paraeducator can't be invited to that collaboration, but it is the special education teacher and the general education teacher's responsibility to do the planning. It's the paraeducator who's executing, right? The special ed teacher should also be the one planning the instruction and intervention. We shouldn't say to a paraeducator, please teach them third grade. That's the educator's job. That's why we went to college, to get this big fancy pay. Now we laugh about our pay, but if you think about your pay in comparison to that paraeducator, it is big and fancy. because that paraeducator is getting very pitiable pay, right? We all know that. So you're really supposed to be the one planning the instruction and intervention. That's not to say you're not talking to them, like, how did it go today? Tell me what worked, what didn't work. Yes, talk to them. They're a human being who's very intelligent, but you are responsible for it. You're also responsible for the data-based decision making, which means that it's helpful when the paraeducator knows how to take data and you've trained them how to take the data you need so that when you sit down together, you can look at the data and make a decision. And it is up to you to make that decision for progress. Frankly, the Andrew versus Douglas County Supreme Court case really changed the bar. Prior to that Supreme Court case, there was a case called Rowley, I forget who that was against, but it said that special education needs to be like, not a Cadillac, but a Ford. I think it even said Pinto at that time, but it was old, right? So it's saying like, it doesn't have to be the best and brightest, but it just has to be okay. It has to be a serviceable thing. Andrew said, yeah, it has to be serviceable. It doesn't have to be a Cadillac, but it has to be so serviceable that the student is making the expected amount of progress in light of their circumstances, and that if you're falling short, your planning fell short. So when we think about that decision making, we need to be making decisions often enough as that special ed teacher and using data from the paraeducator often enough that we are responsive quickly and we are adjusting what the paraeducator is doing so that the student's making progress. That's something a paraeducator can't do. Here's one that usually surprises people. It's the special ed teacher who should be communicating with parents, not the paraeducator. Now that's a hard one for parents because the person they know is with their kid is the paraeducator. And sometimes we even have the paraeducator like walking the kid out to the car and the parent now wants to talk to the grown-up that's holding their child's hand. In which case it's time to think about, should the paraeducators maybe be loading the bus and the teacher be loading the cars so that they can be doing that point of contact? How do we inform parents? Yes, your paraeducator is amazing and you are welcome to chit-chat just about general things, but I am their educator and I am responsible for that. How do we communicate that with parents up front and early on? How do we make sure that we're the one developing the IEP? We're the one informing the IEP. Parents might ask that the paraeducator participate in the meeting. That's fine. I'm all for paraeducators participating in the meeting, but they are not decision makers, and they are not trained in what FAPE means and looks like. That is a special ed teacher's job to facilitate that work. They are also the one who should be creating the progress reports. Now, I don't mean actually going into the wizard and pushing print. If you want to have a paraeducator figure out your wizard and pushing print, go for it. I mean, they're the one that's verifying that this progress report that says that this student is making progress or not making progress is supported and substantiated by data and accurate. They're the ones that need to be responsible. The special ed teacher is the one responsible for ensuring the accommodations and or modifications occur as planned in the IEP. The paraeducator might be executing that plan, but they are not the one responsible for ensuring it happens, nor is the paraeducator the one responsible for FAPE. It is the special ed teacher. Now, together, they make all that happen. But the responsibility lies in the teacher, which is why it's really important we have a relationship with our paraeducator. But frankly, this is something you can just even take this slide when you meet with your paraeducators and say, let's define our roles. And I've given you a template, right, to start that conversation. So what are the strategies to do that? That's a lot of responsibility on the teacher. That's a lot of responsibility in thinking about the fact that you're responsible for someone's behavior and someone you may or may not even spend the time with during the day. I think about some of the paraeducators I had who met a student at a bus, went into a general ed setting, and I saw them at the end of the day when they put the student on the bus. How do I know that what they're doing met all of those responsibilities and that it aligned with expectations without skulking around and spying on them all day, which, by the way, I can't do because I have other students, right? So how do we set that up? So we want to talk about the strategies that if those are our responsibilities, we can actually achieve them. So first and foremost, I want to make apparent why this is so important. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projected 5.4% growth in jobs between 2021 and 31. 1,235,000 paraeducators are employed in public schools. Now, in some ways, that number sounds so big to me, and in some ways, I'm like, I think that was all in my district. I felt like we were sometimes overrun by paraeducators, right? So it's a hard number to quantify when you think about it. But if you think about the fact that there's more than 153,000, almost 154,000 openings each year for paraeducators, even if you divide that by 50, right? That means we have 30,000 openings, or 3,000 openings, right here in Tennessee. We only have 149 districts. We only have 149 districts. For some districts, you're large enough, you're gonna have 20, 30 openings a year for paraeducators. They're hard to find. That also means you're educating 20 to 30 people on a job that doesn't have a good description. Because the description is you're going to do whatever it is the team decides we need to do for the kid. We don't know yet what they're going to decide because they decide every year. Like, that's a terrible job description. But that is the job. As of 2022, there were 9,460 paraeducators just in special education in Tennessee. That's a lot of people to manage, and the numbers are only increasing. Yet, in this study by Barnes, the majority of special education teachers report that the biggest barrier is that they just simply don't have time to train or collaborate with their paraeducators. And the paraeducators, their biggest barrier to success in their job is that they don't know what to do and there's no one to train them. Sound familiar? I know for me, our training consisted of standing at the bus, waiting for the bus. And it was like, okay, so this is how it's gonna go today. Okay, great. And then we got the kids and we ran. That is not sufficient, right? I knew it, they knew it. It's just what we had. So let's talk about how you can work as partners. First and foremost, we need to advocate for, and it's why, again, it's on this fancy PowerPoint that you can just like take and give to someone who needs to hear it. It's why we need to have planned into our schedule check-ins. And not the 5-minute, 10-minute at the bus check-in, but let's sit down and talk about how the student is doing and look at the data and have a plan check-in. We need to have purposeful collaboration. And I put purposeful there because I don't know about you, but when I get with the other adults that I care richly and deeply about, we're the ones who are like duking it out some days and like surviving it other days and crying it out other days and cheering it on other days. When we get together, we want to talk about how each other's family is doing and how we're feeling about things and just about each other. But that's not purposeful, that's just connecting. So purposeful collaboration is something very different. And then strategies for handling conflict, emergency situations, and the unexpected. Even the paraeducator you work with best, at some point you will disagree because you are both, I'm sorry to tell you, human. And humans do not communicate perfectly. And so at some point you will disagree. So what is the plan? And ultimately, it requires that we plan ahead of time. And so my hope is to give you some ideas for how to plan ahead of time. So first of all and foremost, build it into your schedule. Now, I say that knowing that schedules are a challenge because it is hard. It is so hard. And as soon as you get your schedule done, you just know it. You're going to print it. You're going to put it on your wall. And what's going to happen? You're going to get another student, or you're going to have to change it. You're going to have an IEP that changes it, right? So schedules are a challenge, and I know that, which is why we need to make this a priority in the scheduling and not, I hope I have time at the end of scheduling, because you won't have time at the end. You have to plan for it purposefully up front. You need to set aside that time, including having conversations sometimes with leadership. Sometimes the biggest thing we can do to help us is to go to the principal in our school or whoever's doing the master schedule, sometimes it's an assistant principal, and say, here's why I really need to look at my schedule differently, where I have time with my paraeducators and why this is important, and then give them that list of reasons. And explain to them why there's certain flexibilities that can't be made, such as eliminating that time. Right? It needs to be not something extra, it needs to be how we do our work. That in order to do our work, we must have this time together. I wish I'd advocated for it better myself, because the years that I had it were smoother. They just were. They were years that things were just rocking and rolling. And the years where it just didn't fit never felt like they worked well. It was every day was an adventure, right? So I say this from, again, a place of knowing that it makes a difference, even though what I'm saying is really, really hard. So first you want to look for a common time. So here's a strategy, is to think of, is there a time in the day when you know that you have like some strong peer tutors that are available in classrooms and kids can be in class working on their tutor, with their tutors, their peer tutors. This isn't a long period of time. This could be 20 minutes. But you have a plan that this is a time when all the students can be in class and we have that time together, right? Or where you talk with your general ed teachers and say, for this block of time, particularly in like middle school, high school, if you have like that study block or you have that homeroom block, and you say to them, yes, I know it's an extra challenge for you, but if I don't have this planning, all day will be a challenge for you. Please give us this so we can make the rest of the day go really well. Right? Working with your related services personnel. There were a couple years that I was able to ask I had students who were receiving OT, PT, and then speech and language services. And I asked them, I said, what would you think about coming in at a common time once a week so that I can meet and plan with my paraeducators, but you meet with the class and you plan activities. Time is yours, you can do whatever, but we'd like to meet. And it took, more than a like simple ask, right? This was us really thinking through what could that look like? What could that sound like? I will tell you, it was so fun for everyone. One, I got to sit with my whole team, which just doesn't happen. But it was awesome to sit as a team because so many of us shared students and whatnot. And we got to sit down, think it through, plan. But we weren't having the fun. The fun was happening in the other room with related service, because my related service providers were able to see, oh, maybe part of the reason why the student's struggling with this communication system is because this part of their fine motor still needs supported, or their gross motor needs supported. And did you notice that when we have the student doing more heavy lifting, we actually see more language coming from him? And did you see this with OT? And they would plan these activities for everyone, and we saw everybody thrive. The students were thriving because skills were embedded within activities that used more than one mode. It gave the related services a chance to see the student outside of their separate space doing their separate things so they could see what does that look like when they leave me. I'm telling you, they had the best time. They planned all sorts of activities for the students and had so much fun planning it. So sometimes when we think we're asking something, we're actually also giving a gift we didn't even know we needed to give. That's an option. So maybe you have one para that's a go-to, right? So let's say I have a classroom over here and I have a classroom over here, and I say on Mondays I'm going to meet with this para, so can you just kind of like be the go-to for that teacher? Can you kind of fly by and check in? And then on Tuesdays I meet with this paraeducator, can you be the fly-by check-in? All right? So you just have someone who's kind of going over and checking in on the classroom to make sure the student's supported, but they're not supported fully the same. You want to account for that, obviously, in IEP hours, but you can do that. It's like maybe once a week. We're not talking about a big chunk of time. Or maybe you set up their lunch where one lunch is an hour and a half and they kind of rotate through, and so everybody gets their hour lunch or whatever you're supposed to give at your school. We had to give an hour, which was really hard. Some only have to do 45 minutes, but you give them their lunch, but then you have that rotation where you have then a collaboration time and it's built into your schedule. So you get a different paraeducator every day as that lunch is the long one. These are a few strategies. These are not the end-all be-all of strategies. These are a few to help you think about the fact that you have time in your day We just have to figure out what to do with it. Here's some other ones. Can you talk to your district about flexible scheduling? So look at what does arrival and what does dismissal look like. Do you really need all paraeducators, or was there one kind of finishing, prepping things in the room? And if that's the case, then I would say maybe you can talk to your administration about flexing, where someone comes early and you meet with them, but then maybe at dismissal you're short one person because they leave a little early, or vice versa. You meet with them after school, but somebody comes late each day. Can you flex that? Or that they do it consistently on the week, right? Maybe it's just Tuesday through Wednesday, if you have, or through Thursday, if you have 3 paraeducators, 1 each day. If you have 5, maybe it's, 1 each day, so that you have this flex of time. Can you go so far as to flex that maybe during those teacher work days or professional development days, they could be on campus with you to do work and development? Right? So often they're not included unless students are on campus. Is there a way to flex some of that time? Our paraeducators would love some of that, because I don't know all your district rules, but I will tell you, I know the great majority of districts, for things like a snow day, which will happen, it will happen, they're without pay that day. So if they have that flex instead, then they could get paid for the day, right? So what are the ways your district can work within your policies to create some flexibility for you to add some time? And then this last one is maybe, just maybe, we need to look at our students' LRE a little bit more before we decide we don't have time. We tend to like to have students with us, and the paraeducators are working hard and need to know that their work is valuable, so they have a student with them. But do students need us? Or did we do our job, which in special ed is to put ourselves out of business, and the student doesn't actually need us as much as we've scheduled them for? I say that knowing that I made that error most of my career. I accounted for the student being with one of us to support him and support him and support him, and didn't really let go the way I needed to, because it is my job to make sure that when they leave school, they don't need special ed, because there isn't special ed waiting at the graduation doorstep to pick them up. I need them to be independent. And that includes students with the most complex needs. How independent can we get them? Because even if they get adult services, there's going to be moments without adult services. How do I get them to be successful? Because frankly, I want every single student to have a chance to thrive as an adult. And I will tell you, if they need support 24/7, their adulthood looks like ours did during COVID. And if we learned nothing else during COVID, we learned that being at home all day on your own, like kind of captured in your own house, is not a life, it's an existence. We aren't working this hard with these students for them to exist. We're working this hard for them to live and thrive. And so maybe, just maybe, we need to say, you know what? All this hard work we've been pouring into this student worked. They need just a little less of us. It might even be just 10 minutes less a day. That's not a lot of time. Maybe the time's there. We're just over-serving some of our students. And I will say these are hard conversations, but if you help parents understand that the reason you're pulling back is because you did the work and it did its job, not because you want to do less, then all of you get to celebrate the fact that all of this planning, all of this stress, all of the coordination was successful. That's what we want. So just maybe we need to think about, are we over-serving students and not allowing them to just be students? This includes even basic mistakes. I'll hear people say, oh, but Allison, if I let this student go to class all by themselves, they might like wander in the hall and be late to class. Yeah, they might. You know who they're going to do that with? the peers who don't have an IEP, who are also wandering the hall and late to class, which tells me you got them to grade appropriate behavior, right? Sometimes we need to step back and say, what is it we really expect for kids that grade? And maybe they're actually there. I recently read an IEP where the goal was that this student would work 40 minutes independently without a prompt. Sounds like a great goal, except that the student was 4. Do you know any 4-year-olds who are going to work 40 minutes independently without a prompt? The ones I know who will entertain themselves for 40 minutes are doing 40 minutes of I prefer not activities, right? Things I would rather they didn't do will entertain them for 40 minutes, but not the actual work. Sometimes we've gotten to such a rhythm that we forgot to step back and say, what do 4-year-olds do? What do 12-year-olds do? What do 14-year-olds do? By the way, they look more like 4-year-olds than 12-year-olds do because now their hormones are crazy. How do we step back and have those discussions? And so roles and responsibilities, we need to be really, really clear about everything we've talked about with everybody that touches that student. That's that general ed teacher, that's that parent, that's the district staff that may or may not be here today. That's your school leadership. Have them understand the roles, responsibilities, and expectations. That's even for those of you who work in elementary school and the kids are out at recess and there's somebody out there, there's an aide, a classroom aide or educational assistant who monitors recess. Let them know they get to monitor the student with an IEP too, right? So how do we plan this? So we are very fortunate. We have a very strong relationship with Capizzi and DeFont. They are 2 professors at Vanderbilt. And so they have graciously given permission that you may use this, which is just lovely. You don't have to write the journal and get permission. So this link is active when you get this. Maybe you need to formally write this up. This is a tool. This is not the tool. It's a tool. We are not monitoring to ask for this. We're monitoring that paraeducators are working under supervision. How you defend that's up to you. So this is a tool to really outline who does what, who's responsible for what. This might even be something you need to do with your general ed teacher for questions like who does the grading, who does the report cards, who does progress reports, right? Again, it's all about making sure this is clear in your language, whatever that might look like. Purposeful collaboration is a key to making that work. Now, purposeful collaboration not only means that you found time to plan, but you also planned how to spend your time. So maybe you have an agenda or you have some sort of structured format. 5 minutes of this, 10 minutes of this, 5 minutes of this. Maybe you've got some other system. Maybe it's submit your questions throughout the week on this, Google form, and then we're going to go through the questions, whatever it might be. But have a system for how you spend that time and make sure both people know what the plan is. Then focus on students at this time. Your paraeducator might have needs you need to focus on because they're also human, right? So they might have some needs you need to focus on. Set a time to talk with them about their needs. But this time is about student needs. What does the student need? Make sure that you have data driving it. Not, well, I just don't think that your lessons work. Well, I think they do. You'll be stuck there forever. But if you have data that says the student has made no progress, then the belief that your instruction doesn't work is verified, right? So use data. Data should always be the loudest, most obnoxious, cannot avoid voice at the table. That's for these collaborations with other teachers, IEP meetings, anything. Data should be the obnoxious voice. Then make sure you're sharing the plan. Here's what I expect. Here's what I expect that to look like, to sound like, to feel like. Here's the level of independence I expect from the learner. Here's the level of prompting I expect from you, right? time to answer any questions or concerns, because this is all going to be new. For some of our paraeducators, they're really savvy. They're ready to get a teaching degree, I agree. They just don't have that degree. And they can fly with a lot of this, but there will be a student that challenges them. For some of our paraeducators, this is the first time they've ever talked about this stuff. They might be a phenomenal parent, but that does not make you an educator, right? So really you have time for that with them. And then document it. Document the decisions that are made. I am a strong proponent of documenting on paper and letting that live in a binder that the paraeducator has, because here's the thing, at some point they are going to go home and sleep, or life is going to happen and they're going to be like, oh, I just met with Allison and we talked about what we're doing with this student and I don't remember what we said we were focusing on this week. So rather than lose the week until they collaborate again, they have it so they can open the thing and said, that's right, we're focusing on double digits this week. All right, I got it. Right? Give them something so that they have it. Include the date of the meeting so you can also see, have we been stuck here? Or are we moving along, right? Who's present? Is it your whole team? Is it just the two of you? Is it a couple of you? What does that look like? And then key decisions that are made. If you make a decision, make sure you have that, and pending concerns. Here's the thing. If a parent is concerned that their student's not making progress, and you can demonstrate that as a school you are making the decisions that you can to forward that progress, you are in a good place. My special ed directors in the room probably have the privilege of reading some of the same court cases I do. And I will tell you, if you are making student-focused decisions, you're in a really good place in courts. 99.9% of cases, if the school could verify the decisions were being made purposefully on behalf of the student using data, it went the school's way. Even if the judge said they disagreed with the school's decision, it still went on behalf of the school. When the decisions were made because it's what the parents were asking for, they lost. Even if they gave the parent everything they asked for. Interesting, right? If you document this, even simple, like a simple Google form, just on a piece of paper, just however, you know you have everything you need to say, we're trying. We are putting forth our best effort. We are committed to your child's success. So you have it. You also have this if you have that moment where you have a paraeducator that it's not working. Anybody ever had that staff where you're like, are we ever going to let him go? Like ever? Any of you ever had that moment? This is your best friend, because now you have data, the loud, obnoxious voice at the table to say, I have met with this person 13 times. We have talked about the same thing 13 times. You know where we are today? Nowhere. It's time to say the students lost too much time. This is your loud, obnoxious friend. Here's a meeting log. This comes from the Council on Exceptional Children. This is an example. This is available publicly. You can use it. This is not required. If this one doesn't work for you, don't use it. If this is a chore, don't add a chore. Here's another option, just in case you didn't like the other one. Because I'm all for choice and personnel preference. So this is from the Meadows Center. This is also publicly available. This is for those people that maybe want shorter writing spaces, but they want things more linear, right? There's those of us who are Excel people, those of us who are Word people. How do we find something that works for both you and the paraeducator in a way that you both understand what it says, you feel comfortable with it, and it's an easy, quick capturing of the hard conversations. And then you can use a Google form. Just quickly get in and type as you go. Put it on a Google form. The nice thing about Google Forms is it timestamps them. Like you legitimately meant. You didn't fill all these out later when you were frustrated, right? An Excel spreadsheet. Having just a notebook for each student to capture things. You can record the meeting as long as both of you or whoever's participating knows. Do not surprise someone with an audio recording of them. That doesn't go well, But as everybody knows, you're more than welcome to do a recording. And frankly, we have some individuals who are working with our students who are phenomenal, but for whom reading and writing is more of a challenge. Accommodate them as you would your students, but make sure they know. Create a paraeducator binder with policies, expectations. Their schedule can include expectations for things that everybody loves, like cell phone usage, right? You might need it to call me in an emergency. You do not need it to see if your Amazon package arrived, right? What other tools could you use? This is really up to you. This is not ours as a state to say we expect this, but it is ours as a state to tell you, you will be in a better shape if you document these meetings and you commit to them. Because it's paraeducator behavior that's coming up increasingly in court cases. Any of my special ed directors in the room, have you been reading LRPs, court summaries? It's all paraeducators, right? It's all paraeducator behavior. It's paraeducators in the classroom, paraeducators on the bus, paraeducators outside, but it's all paraeducator behavior. And the people that are having to attest to it are the teachers, the principals, and the SPED directors. Why don't you just give yourself the security blanket and come up with this plan for you? But then, even if you do all this, there's going to be a moment y'all don't agree. Sometimes it's more than a moment. Sometimes it's a lot of moments. But sometimes it's a few. But I will tell you to plan for disagreement when you're in a good place. Even if it's just, hello, welcome to my classroom, and you haven't even had a chance to meet. Plan for the disagreement and figure out how you're going to handle it. Because everybody's different. I am one of those people who, when I am hurt, when I am frustrated, when I'm upset, I need to be by myself. I need to think it through. I need to process. I will put all of it on me, and I need to sort out what is mine to own and what is not mine to own. I need to take time to process it through. My husband is one of those people, when he is frustrated or upset, wants to talk about it right now. So if we're both frustrated and upset, are we in the same place? Sure not. He's ready to talk, and I'm saying not now. You're going to have those same dynamics in your room. We're going to have someone who wants to talk right now and someone who says not right now. What's your plan? Is it to say, when we are frustrated, we're going to give ourselves 30 minutes and then we're going to set up a time? I get time, but you also know that it's coming, right? Like, how do we set that up so that everybody knows what the process is when we disagree? It'll also avoid everybody's favorite moment where someone comes in. You can't really fly in the room now because you got to like lean over and unlock the door and come in, right? So it's a little less subtle. But you come in and then you say, all right, we got to talk. That doesn't go for anyone. Now somebody's off guard. Instead, you can say, can we meet in 30 minutes? I think we have something to talk about. That's my code. Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to figure out what's happening, right? Have a plan for what that is. Maybe even a safe word for when you need to back off and away from each other, right? At one school, somebody was talking about how they were observing a bunch of kids interacting. This was a situation where a student was a great challenge, and a paraeducator was working so well with this student, really doing great work, but the paraeducator suddenly said, you know what, I got to go get my keys out of the car, and got up. And another paraeducator went over, and the person observing was like, really? While you're working with this kid, now you're worried about your keys? That was the code. That was, I'm tapped out. I got to take a break. And because it was a code, immediately someone was like, there's not time to discuss if it's time to go to the car. That's the code. Do you have a code for when you are about to have a conflict so that you can say, I hear you, and we'll talk about it, but not right here, not right now, not in front of this class or whatever. Have that discussion now while you're feeling okay about each other, when it's safe, and then put that in your binder or in your procedures or your policies so everybody knows the plan when there is conflict. I hope you don't have to use it, but if you keep working with grown-ups, you're going to have to use it, right? And at some point, it is okay to say, you know what, I feel like we are so emotionally wound up in our own spot that we're having trouble finding some options. We need someone to help us find an option. Bring in a third neutral party who could say, I hear this and I hear this. Have you considered this, this, or this? They might have just the right solution to find your path out of that, right? It is okay. Make sure you have clear communication plan. Learn each other's work styles too. It's very easy to get fussy to be like, well, I'll give her direction, and then she like goes through her stuff and she like fills up her Stanley, and then she goes and does this, and she doesn't follow my directions for like 5 to 10 minutes. But is that person's work style to think through, make a plan, organize, make sure everything is in place first so that they can execute? If you know that, then it's okay to be like, hey, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to need you to. And now I gave them the time to plan, right? Do they need all the details? Do they want step by step? Or does that feel like micromanaging for them? Do they need the big goal? Or are they then like, I have no direction? What is their work style? What do they need? Is this someone who comes in the morning and they're like ready and like, we're going to learn and we're all going to be amazing and this is fantastic. Give them your busy kids in the morning. Or do you have someone that comes in and is like, yep, I made it. Sure made it today. But boy, after lunch, they are all over it. Give them the active afternoon. Know your people, right? Even when you're fully in disagreement, and I will tell you, I've had strong disagreements with my paraeducators in my career. And some of them have been not pretty, and I'm not proud. But in that moment, you need to step back and say, ultimately, we did all come here today for students. I might not agree with you. I might not like the way you do this. I might really struggle with who you are as a person. I might not connect with you as a person, but you are here for students. I'm here for students. We're going to start from that place of agreement. So here is a tool, again, from Capizzi and DeFont. Again, you are allowed to use it thanks to our relationship with them. I'm always so grateful to them. Here's a tool to help you plan communication and to really think about how you're going to talk about each other with work style preferences. You don't have to use it, but you're welcome to use it thanks to them. So here's a few final thoughts so that you have time for questions. They are our important partners. We don't really have a choice right now but to partner with them. There are days, I get it, there are days we wish we had a choice. I get it. But we don't. So we need to learn to make them our partner. There is training available to them. If you're like, I can't train them on everything, I literally don't have the time. Even if I do that collaboration, we're just going to get through what the lesson plans are, but nothing else. That's fine. There's free training available, and that training is designed to be able to be done quickly in 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes, which can be, again, in that lunchtime. Make sure you keep track of what's going on. And then bonus idea for appreciating them, top 10. When somebody comes in the room, introduce them. I can't tell you how many times I visit a classroom and nobody tells me who the adults are in the room. Just say, this is my paraeducator, Sarah. Treat them as though they are equal. They are human. They are an adult. They are as complex and as valuable as you are. Their feelings are as valid. Say thank you at the end of the day. I know that sounds silly, but it goes a long way to just be like, thank you. Sometimes it's like, hey, thanks for making it all the way to the end of the day. I wasn't sure we would, right? And sometimes it's just thank you. Just get to know them. Are they married? Are they not married? Do they have children? What do they care about? What do they like? What's their favorite drink from Sonic? Can you pick it up one day? Ask for their feedback and value it. You don't have to do it, but you have to value it. Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that. Or, gosh, I really appreciate that that's important to you because I think that's really important too, right? Like value it, hear it. Use the term paraeducator because that is a professional's assistant. It is a classier way to refer to the work they do, even when wearing gloves. Buy them a coffee or their favorite soda or whatever it is, right? Just write them a quick note. Hey, I walked by so-and-so's class, and every time I see you with that student, I'm just so happy because I know that kid is in good hands. Give them a break. You have that kid that's out for the flu, or you have a little extra time because your IEP ended, and you just come into someone's classroom and you say, hey, nothing personal, but I have a little extra time. Why don't you give yourself an extra 20 minutes today? Right? Include them in the school community. Hey, did you know there's a dance? I'm planning on going, are you? I'm gonna chaperone. Just treat them like they matter. And so with that, this is me. I hope this is helpful. I hope this gives you some guidance. But if you have any questions, we do have a few minutes.
What sort of advice do you have for when the assistants, paraeducators do not get along with each other?
Yeah, when they don't enjoy each other, I strategically schedule them in 2 different places all day long. And then I try and find, in the meantime, the thing I know is the same about them, and then do something about the same, right? So, I think of 2 I had who just really, really did not like each other, but they both loved that public chantilly cake and would talk about it endlessly when they were with me, like endlessly. Like I thought there was something magical about this cake. I gotta tell you, it's white cake. But like they thought it was amazing. And so then I just brought in chantilly cake one day and was like, hey, I have cake and coffee in the classroom because you talk so much about that cake. I would love for you both to come in and just sit with me and have some coffee before the kids get here. And it was hard to be mad at each other over cake. So sometimes you just have to find that thing that they both like that they can't be mad at each other about because they both like it. But I scheduled them in 2 different places and let them be their own adult to figure some of it out. Yeah, and sometimes you just have to say, I know we're all adults and it's hard, but if we're here for kids, we got to put the kids over ourselves. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard with personalities. Yeah. So that's some of it, and sometimes you just have to have a hard conversation where you say, this is our rules for conflict. Here's a room. Go handle your conflict. Yeah, duke it out in the back. Yeah, no, but you do give them, this is how we deal with conflict in this room. Can you please go have that conversation about the conflict? If you need a neutral third party, we will bring someone. It will not be me because I am not neutral. I work with both of you and I care about both of you. And sometimes we have to get to that point. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. There are some rooms, I was recently in a room and they had 14 paraeducators. Good luck getting them all to agree, right? That's a lot of adults. So it is hard, but that's why those protocols for conflict are important, protocols for how we behave, having policies in place so that you can, if nothing else, you can say, our policy is that we treat each other with respect, and respect looks like this. Yeah, I know that's not perfect when you're struggling, but I hope that helps.
I'd like to ask just offer another request. Have any of you had particular successes working with paraeducators that you would like to share during this Q&A period right now? Any successes that you've found that really work well? I would love to hear them.
So like Dr. Gold, I had a lot of experience working with many paraeducators over the years, and I think as a new teacher getting started, I really had to grow into it. Most of the ladies that I worked with initially were old enough to be my mother, and sometimes they wanted to act in that capacity and take care of me and kind of direct what we were doing. And I just always had to ground the work that we were doing focused on those students' IEPs and what were our common goals and what did we want to see our kids grow into, and they were always our kids. And that's not to say that we didn't have conflict. We certainly did. At one point, I had 7 assistants in a room, and that's a lot of personalities. And I think we had about 16 kids, so a lot of student needs as well. But you, as the educator, set the culture for that classroom, because it really becomes its own special little community. And I tried to never ask the assistants or paraeducators to do anything that I wasn't willing to do. I changed diapers, I chased kids, I did all the things that they were expected to do right alongside them, and I tried to value and praise the work that they were doing and just treat them with common decency and respect. And I will say, being as a special ed teacher who kind of pushed in, so to speak, to learn to collaborate, I've felt what it feels like to be an assistant in a gen ed teacher's room, especially when it's outside of your area of expertise, your content knowledge, and that's a pretty humbling experience. And so when I did my dissertation, my work was around those collaborative relationships and how we view and how we interact with one another, and how ultimately that shapes how we provide services to our students. And listening to what folks said, whether they were gen ed, SPED, or a paraeducator, was extremely valuable to me, and it really helped me to frame the context that I try to operate within, which is, always being respectful and having those same expectations for my workload that I would ask of anyone else. Mm-hmm. So I did have some really good success and love some of those ladies dearly.
Right.
So
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Yeah, the hope is always to have that success, right? And I think you hit on something really big there, in that you do have to have them see you do the good, bad, and the ugly, right? The student who is really struggling with behavior, you need to show them that you also can endure it and will endure it. The student who is, I always call them a bathroom artist, right? So those students who do things in the bathroom we would prefer they didn't, that you will be part of that, and you will clean it up, and you will wear the gloves and all that too. Being able to show them that you also struggle. So letting them see that you don't have all the answers, which I think is the hardest part. I've said this about education. I didn't say it in this session yet, but education is the weirdest professional degree, because in any other professional degree, you have a mentor and a coach when you get out. They don't expect you to be ready to go, right? So you get your doctor degree and you still have to work under another doctor for 6 years before you're allowed to kind of fly solo. And in education, we're like, oh, you got your professional degree. Here's a set of keys. We're gonna lock you in this room with these kids. We hope you come out at the end of the day. And by the way, you better be a 5. There's no coaching, there's no membership, there's no soft entry into teaching. It's just the weirdest profession. And so I think what happens is that we get where we will not be vulnerable. We will not show our weakness because there's not room for it in the way that we're introduced into the profession. But if you can show with the paras and be like, I don't know what to do with the student right now. I'm trying to think, here's thoughts I have. Then they can see that they don't have to know it either. It's okay. We're all fumbling through. And I think there's value in that. And I appreciate you highlighting some of that.
I work in the capacity of being inclusion, and I have one intervention class, but I have different we don't call them one-to-one, but educational assistants assigned to certain individuals. And I have one that I've worked with, this will be my 5th year coming up. And she's been with the same student, and she said she's graduating when she graduates, but she's amazing though. She is we work as a team. We think outside the box because this one child is on the alt path, but in all gen ed classes. So we do a lot of creative scheduling to make sure she hits but she's so good at it. She has a background in finance and has a degree, just not education. But when we did personal finance, or when we were working on sight words, because when I got this child in 7th grade, she could not read. She's now on the 2nd grade level from our collaboration. 1st to 2nd grade, but that's huge.
That's gigantic.
And it's we have to repeat things all the time, but that's okay. But she's social, she's excelling. And when I'm not sure, I hit a roadblock and I'm we collaborate together and figure out a way to try. If it doesn't work, we come back to the table. And I've been so blessed with this woman. Not only is she a really good friend, but she's so good in her heart is with this child.
Yeah.
And it's great because I don't have to do all of the thinking.
You don't have to love and think and
Yes.
plan and
Yeah. Because we work on strategies to help her retain stuff. So that's been a huge blessing. And it's not always that way because I've had the other end of this.
So you've had humans.
Yes.
Okay.
that could barely operate a copy machine if you said push copy. And that's hard because you rely on people that, can do that stuff for you, so.
For sure. Now, my little face when she said this person's been with the student the whole time, she knows me enough to know, is I do recommend you have at least 2 paraeducators work with any student, especially if they have a one-on-one, because when one's out, the day falls apart. right? If they count on that one. Also, we all get kind of blind to the student when we work with them every day. It even happens for I taught like basically what you often refer to as CDC programs, but I taught in what that like sort of self-contained, but I'd have the same students for 7 years or more. And you get where you know the students so much that you celebrate their growth, but you kind of lose track of their growth in comparison to others. You kind of lose, it's kind of like that parent versus the visiting aunt. The parents lose track that their kids are growing, and the aunt comes up and is like, oh my gosh, they look like entirely different children because they haven't seen them every day. When you have that same para with a student forever, they kind of get in a rhythm, but they might be in a rhythm where they're not pushing the way they could. Now this one seems to be working, but just have a caution about having a single person with a student every year and having a single person with a student, because if that student's day falls apart when that person's out, then you lose a whole day and you have to recover. So I do always give those, and I appreciate you pointing that out, but it sounds like she is a gem. She says she's retiring when the student graduates, but it sounds like it's a shame. We should capture her in teaching instead. Everybody's pointing, but nobody is acknowledging.
I was a paraeducator for several years, and I had the wonderful opportunity to work with these 3 lovely people. And I was just going to say, as a paraeducator, it was really nice to have just a very welcoming environment for questions, and it was also really nice to be put in situations where you can see them modeling how to teach and how to resolve conflicts. It was just a really good experience on my way to become a teacher.
It must have been, because you're still sitting with them.
Yes.
So it must be working out, right? It does matter, and that culture does matter. And frankly, it hurts everyone when the culture's not there. It doesn't make the teacher any happier to go if the culture's not there than the students, right? Yeah.
Okay, I've had the same paraeducator for 11 years with me, and
Goodness.
this upcoming year I will not be with her because I'm changing schools, so I'm very, very upset.
Oh,
she
so
wants
you guys
to go.
have an involuntary divorce.
The most important thing with us is just I value her. Like from day one, we just I kind of gave her a schedule. I'm like, this is what we do. Just kind of what I wanted her to do, and she just ran with it. Like she had those expectations, and I taught her how to take data, and we would alternate kids so that we were both getting to see where they were at. And sometimes one would want her over me or vice versa, and we could get more. So we just kind of tag team stuff. But when it was her birthday, I bought her lunch. I made cake. I'm a baker too, so I always bring stuff in. And of course, don't forget Paraprofessional Day. We always buy them lunch, make them feel like super important. And if I was stopping for a coffee, I'm not coming in without another one,
Yeah.
And we've just built this awesome relationship. And when we interviewed her, she had never even changed a diaper in her whole life or anything. And I was like, I want her. And my principal's like, you do? And I'm like, yes, I want her. Like there was just something about her energy and everything. And so it worked out like amazing. And I'm gonna miss her so much, but
I have a feeling you're gonna figure it out.
I
It's
hope
just a hunch, but I have a feeling you're gonna figure it out.
I hope so. I mean, she's already like, you got to call me every day when you get off work. I'm like, I know, I will. But
Yeah.
there are some really good ones out there. I had a couple
There are
before
some
she came. I had a
amazing
couple
ones.
that I was like, dear God, get them out of here. But
Yeah.
she was awesome. So it's just
When you
appreciating
get a good
them.
one, it really raises the bar too, right? Because now you expect that from all your paraeducators, so it's hard to have that learning curve up.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but you brought up an interesting thing that I think is also one of the key strategies, but it's one I at the department can't require because you have local control and but being part of the interview. You being part of the interview was a key to that success. You'd already vested in her before she started because she was you were part of the selection process for her to be in your room. She wasn't just assigned. And you talked about how it's really hard when you walk into the room and you have paras that have been there who like what they've been doing and want to keep going, right? And it's that hiring does make a difference. It just does versus the inheriting. So if you have a chance, it's really up to your district, but if you have a chance to be part of that interview, even if it feels like one more thing and you're not sure how to manage it in your schedule, I say figure it out. Go be part of those interviews.
I have a question to follow up her remarks regarding sharing data. Are there different levels of access for paraeducators to confidential information, or is it the same? Would you talk about that?
Yeah, it's really more like the teacher than not, because the way that IDA is written is that data and the IEP can be shared with anyone who's supporting the student in their plan and in their instruction, and the para is. So they can see that full IEP, they can be part of that data. They just cannot be like the decision makers, right? But they absolutely can and should. I'm always worried when I hear of a para who didn't know that there was like something in the IEP, and I'm like, but you're like sitting with the child, you should know, because that is what's in IDA. So great question.
Okay, I'm a gen ed teacher, so don't hold it against me.
No, we love that you're here at gen ed. Why would we hold that against you? That's amazing.
Because I don't know all the lingo sometimes. But anyway, long story, I was going to be a social worker. So I was going to get my master's. So I had to get a job. So I was taught at Head Start. And you talk about a fish out of water. I was an idiot. And those ladies that were old enough to be my mom, they were all paras. And if they hadn't have taken me under their wing and mentored me, I don't know where I would be at this point. They are the ones that made me want to be a teacher. So I think a lot of it is perspective. Some people come in, these are my assistants. And, that's unfortunate. I just think with paras, I've said this my whole career, they are the backbone of the school. They help us do our jobs. They are so underappreciated, but they really rule the world and help us do our jobs. So I think a lot of it is you've got to come in there with a good attitude until you can't have a good attitude, if that makes sense.
For sure. And frankly, they're usually from the community too, so they can tell you more about what's going on in the community than you'll know, unless you also live in that community. Yeah, they're amazing. They can be, I think back to some of the paras. I just got a Christmas card this last Christmas from one of the paras in my first classrooms, and she still is talking about it, right? Like, they can be amazing, but I do wish I'd put more in place so that I could have had that with everybody. Hindsight's 20/20, they always tell you. So I hope that this gives you something so that you aren't like me standing there after decades and saying, oh, if only, but instead can say, I did. And you can be the one that celebrates in the next time you hear this. But I do want to leave you with one image before I leave. Teaching's so hard. It is so hard. There is a lot of noise around us telling us who we are and what we are. We need to actually be the ones making the noise and telling the stories. But we also need to think about that flight attendant who tells everyone when the oxygen masks fall to put them on yourself before others. Now, as a kid, I always thought she just didn't like children, but now I get it. And we really do need to make sure we put that oxygen mask on ourselves every day, because otherwise the very flame that brings you to things like this during the middle of the summer will dim because it feeds on oxygen. So please make sure you input all the oxygen you can so that you have the spirit, the energy, the love, the passion, and the fire needed to do what is a very hard job. So please take care of yourself first. Even if it's hard for you to take care of yourself, because there's a few of you who are like, oh, but I'll make sure my paras do that. No, do it for you, just to even model for them what you expect if you won't do it for yourself. So I just want to thank you. I know that this is your summer. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. If you need anything, that's me.